Let's go to the story. Families of the South African soldiers deployed in the Eastern DRC are growing increasingly anxious as the situation in Goma gets even more volatile. Violent clashes, the blocking of critical supply routes, as well as the closure of the airport have deepened fears about their safety. 13 soldiers have lost their lives in just the past week, and several others are being treated in hospital, adding to the family's distress. There has been no word as yet from President Cyril Ramaphosa or the Defence Minister, Angie Motshekga, leaving many families desperate for answers. Let's now cross live to our reporter, Veronica, who is following up on this developing story. Veronica, what are you hearing from some of these families? And here again, we're still waiting on the Defence Ministry to confirm what time the press briefing is going to be.
Certainly, Aldrin, and that silence is so loud in terms of what needs to be answered for many of the families and the South Africans who are waiting, of course, anxiously, desperately seeking answers about not only the situation on the soldiers on the ground, but those that, of course, we've heard numbers of people who have been wounded and treated in hospital. We know, of course, that the South African National Defence Force and the soldiers that have been deployed to that mission in the DRC, of course, following reports stemming from last week about the violent escalations that we've been seeing in the eastern parts of that country, of course affecting our teams and our troops that are part of that diplomatic mission, if you'd like, of peacekeeping in that region. Since last week, when we heard of those 2 days of violent clashes, the Thursday and the Friday, escalations have gotten worse. Many of the families are having to rely on videos and images that are coming out from social media in terms of the volatility of the situation. And of course, you can understand that as days go by, no word from the president, no word from Angie Motshekga. We understand that the Defense Department did say, when we did reach out to them earlier in the week to find out whether or not there would be any sort of a press briefing, or at least an opportunity to speak to the media to create some sort of clarity as to what is taking place. They said that Angie Motshekga would first need to, of course, brief the president on what is happening. But as those days go by, Aldrin, you can imagine that the families of those who have passed away and those who are wondering about the safety and security of their loved one grows ever increasingly desperate. And so, of course, as we continue to watch the situation unfold, there is more calls for transparency and, of course, just a bit of information to come out on the status of those soldiers, given the fact that the issues that they are facing, the conflict itself, the cutting off of supply routes, the blockade of the airspace, paints a very desperate picture in terms of how they've been able to protect themselves and, if at all, they have been able to reach their loved ones here in South Africa.